I've always said if you didn't know where you came from, you will not know where you're going.
I think a retired athlete is qualified to do anything because sports has taught him or her lessons which are useful across life.
We're fortunate to have the family we have. I would say that would be the single greatest blessing of all, by a long shot.
So what drove you to start giving back to sport so early on in your career?
I used to make a film camera out of a cardboard box and put a magnifying glass on one end and a flashlight on the other end, and then pretend it was a movie camera.
You played a role in getting tennis into Olympics.
The great thing about live television is on live, you can't lie. This is it, It's gone, it's done, it's gone.
There are now these new age racket games that are becoming popular, the paddle and the pickleball and so on. How do you see tennis fitting into this changing sports landscape?
The hospitality in this country is overwhelmingly so far ahead of anywhere else in the world that you could possibly look at, that we can do wonders with the Olympics being here.
If you could go back in time and give advice to the 7-year-old Vijay, what would that be?
My whole life has been unscripted.
Vijay, you've had a very cinematic twist to your career as well. I don't think there's any athlete who can say that they played Wimbledon match and starred in a Bond movie in the same lifetime, let alone the same day. So tell us, how did this miracle happen and how did you land up with roles like Octopussy and Star Trek and so on?
So 1981, when I was playing the quarterfinals at Wimbledon against Connors, the producers of the Bond picture were watching my match.
Okay.
And after the match was over, they wanted to have tea with me, and so I said, great. So I had tea with them, and they said, listen, we are writing the script and it's going to be done, and we're casting a person to be Bond's man in India. And we've looked at hundreds of actors for this role, both in the UK and India and everywhere else, and we really haven't the director hasn't come up with the one that he wants. You look like you can fit the role, would you consider it? I thought he was joking, first of all, this would be my first picture. And I said, are you sure? Have you done any acting? I said, no, I've played McEnroe a few times, but that's about it, And so we made a joke of it. And they said, would you consider doing a screen test? So I didn't know what a screen test was at the time. So I said, yes, I will. Just to say that I'd worked at Pinewood in the morning and was able to go to Wimbledon in the afternoon, kind of thing. So no one else could say that. So they flew in an American actor by the name of James Brolin, who's now married to Barbara Streisand. They flew him in from LA to London to do a screen test with me. And the director, John Glenn, shot this scene, and I had to work with a snake in that picture and in the screen test. And they called me back a couple of weeks later and said, we want to sign you up for 14 weeks. I said, 14 weeks? I'm in the middle of my tour here, I can't give 14 weeks to a picture. And they said, well, we need you for 14 weeks. And I said, okay, well, listen, I really would like to do it. Why don't you give me a schedule where I can do 3 weeks and go off and play 3 tournaments, and then come back and do 2 weeks and go back and for the first time they said yes, because normally insurance wouldn't cover you to do that. And they let me do that. I did that picture. But the Bond picture was a true eye-opener as to what excellence is at the highest level, where everything could go wrong, especially in the action sequences. And I couldn't believe what they go through for 1 minute of film. Yes. And how we all enjoy it for a couple of hours afterwards, and it was magnificent to be a part of that, Bond family.
Yeah, the couple of hours that we enjoy takes, months of
yes,
work.
In certain cases, yes.
Exactly.
And I was thinking to myself, two of the most iconic historic films of all time are Bond and Star Trek.
Right.
And to have been a part of both, which I was fascinated with as growing up. The first ever A picture that I went to see in India was Goldfinger. So to be able to do Bond and to do Star Trek was unique.
Yes. So not just cinema, but your movement from playing to commentary. I mean, in that sense, it just looked like a natural progression. But I think what stood out really was the insightful perspective that you brought to the game. I remember that we all would kind of switch on our television 1 hour before the match started, just to listen to you, and of course your partnership with Alan Wilkins
yes.
at that time. So, any memorable events, of your time doing commentary, including your partnership with Alan?
The great thing about live television is, on live, you can't lie. This is it. It's gone. It's done. It's gone. It's
already in the air.
It's there. You can make tons of mistakes and it's gone, right? So you can't correct yourself. That's the first thing. Secondly, when you're doing live television and you're talking about something, looking at the camera, you got someone in your ear talking to you. So he or she is talking to you in your ear as you're kind of trying to deliver some sense of thought, And even if it's a sport that you know so well,
Right.
you're talking about an individual sport. And that's the tricky bit. The third thing is that what I wanted to bring to the table is not just talk about tennis, because it can get boring for people who don't like tennis. Let's say a family of 4 are watching. 2 like tennis, 2 do not. How do I keep the 2 who like tennis entertained, but at the same time I want to bring in the 2 who have not watched tennis, right? So I would bring in other things, Anna Kournikova's dog, or Sharapova's dinner plans that evening, or those kinds of things which kind of talked about other things other than just the game.
Right.
And so all of a sudden it became a little bit more of a people magazine, and you talked about interesting things that people might want to know about her birthday, or his who he dated yesterday, and so on and so forth during the tour. So those kinds of things made it a little bit more lively and interesting. And Alan and I always had a incredible a repertoire of stuff that we could talk about, even when we had to fill.
Okay.
Often enough, when we were going off air, there might be 25 minutes to fill with everything being done. Every thing that had been recorded had been shown.
Okay.
All matches have been replayed. Now you got to fill for 25 minutes. What are you supposed to talk about? And so those things gave us a good education of what live television is all about. And I think, thankfully, I had someone like Alan to be able to work with. I grew up when I started television with Brian Langley for 5 years, and then he sadly passed away. And then Alan and I did it for 16 years. So we enjoyed being with each other, like playing doubles, and I think it showed.
Yes, it did show. And also one more thing, the impact that you may not have realized, but what we realized as audience was that with that, your way of commentary, I think you made tennis more accessible to people. So as you're saying, 4 people watching, 2 were not really starting to watch it because of tennis.
Right.
But gradually, they also got interested in tennis.
Correct.
So you just expanded the,
Thank you.
the accessibility of that game. You also became the president of the ATP Player Council. And at that time, tennis saw a lot of changes, including the formation of the ATP Tour and, all about player representation and so on. What were a few of the toughest decisions that you had to make in that tenure of yours?
So I became president as the first president of the new ATP Tour as we knew it.
Right.
ATP Tour was formed in '89. And the tour as we know it today started from 1990 onwards.
Okay.
And prior to that, ATP was just an association.
Okay.
So it was an association of tennis professionals that formed together as a union. And there was an MIPTC, which was the Men's International Professional Tennis Council, that ran the game.
Okay.
Till then.
Okay.
We were pulling away from the MIPTC, and we wanted the tournament directors also to go with us.
Okay.
They owned the tournaments, and we were putting together the tour.
Okay.
So the players and the tournaments are what we thought would make the difference to form the ATP Tour as we know it. 50-50 partnership. So the ITF stepped out. They run the Davis Cup and the Fed Cup for women and so on and so forth. And the ATP Tour started with tournaments all over the world, with the tournament directors owning 50% and the players owning 50%. Okay? And they had 6-member board, player council, and I was the president, the first president of the tour, as we know it, as the player council president. And we created all these various tournaments in place. Over the period of time, I helped create ATP University so that young kids coming into the tour will understand what it is to be out there in the wilderness. So we gave them education on how to deal with sponsors, how to deal with the media, how to deal with fans, how to deal with their own coaches.
Okay.
So it was a good education that you had to do before you could actually join the tour. Then I helped create an ATP pension plan so that players who eventually retire will actually get a pension between the ages of 50 and 70. So we created that as well. We created several things that are in place today. And the tour started to really grow after that. We had tournaments in every corner of the earth. We're the second most global sport in the world after soccer.
Oh.
One thing that should never be tampered with. It is the world's second largest sport. It is the world's second largest global sport after soccer. And we have to keep it that way because it's non-seasonal. It's always been non-seasonal. So when winter gets bad, you can actually play indoors. So from court surfaces to ball changes to continent changes and so on, you could go with the weather where you wanted to go and the calendar changes.
Right.
So it works beautifully as you move forward. Let's not forget that in the 70s and 80s, every capital in Asia had a tournament. Manila, Hong Kong, Singapore, Jakarta, Seoul, Tokyo, Delhi, Tehran, Cairo. We had tournaments across. Today we have none. Only China has tournaments, right? And the only license that is owned in Asia is in Osaka.
Okay.
But the Seoul license and the Hong Kong license are leased. My point is that we shouldn't lose the track that this is a global sport. Secondly, what the top player needs, the 100th player doesn't need. What Stockholm needs, Chennai doesn't need. So we have to play the game so that each person is compensated in the proper manner. So everyone has a chance to play.
Okay.
So I need more tournaments, in my opinion, back to where we were in the 70s and 80s. When I was president of the ATP, I worked with the board to be able to put Doha and Dubai on the calendar.
Okay.
And now they're two of the best tournaments that we've got on the tour. My point is that we have to take care of the countries of the world that don't have tournaments. They don't need the 1000 series events because they're too big for us. We have the smaller event so that it will continue to generate more players from this part of the world.
Right.
From Asia, India, subcontinent, the Middle East, and so on and so forth. We're not doing that. So I think it's important to have tournaments across the board, across the world, so that new guys can continue to grow and tennis can continue to remain popular in countries that don't have tournaments. We don't have any tournament in India at the moment. And I've been working at it for the last 2 years trying to get one.
So will we make that happen?
I certainly hope so. I certainly hope so.
But you're saying, the second largest sport and global sport and so on, but there are now these new age racket games that are becoming popular, the paddle and the pickleball and so on. So how do you think those are threat to tennis? How do you see tennis fitting into this changing sports landscape?
I think people have looked at pickleball saying, oh, older people can play and it's easier. The great thing about pickleball is you can pick it up very easily. You can, anyone can pick it up and in 30, 40 minutes, you become good enough to enjoy it. Tennis and golf and all of these other individual sports are hard to do that. It's complicated, You need to really work at it. So those things have to be looked at very carefully. The one thing that concerns me about pickleball is apparently it's the world's #1 sport for injuries.
Oh, okay.
I played it once, I got a bad back, so I'm being careful with it. But because the ball doesn't bounce, it's a wiffle ball. So it doesn't bounce up, So you're bending down constantly.
Yes.
But there's an art in doing that.
The net is also down.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can't go into the kitchen, which is where the line is drawn.
Yes.
So when you look at it, apparently there's a way to be able to bend rather than using your back. So there's a way to do this, method to the madness.
Okay.
But I think you have to be careful if that's what the medical professionals are saying about injury, because you don't want it to stay with you forever. But if it's a sport for enjoyment, absolutely.
Your son Prakash recalled you saying, "The good news is I'm your father. The bad news is I'm your father." So, of course, that sentence has humor, but I think it has a lot of weight. Legacy can be a gift, but it can also be a challenge. So, what did you mean by this statement, and how did this play out in your kind of chemistry with your son?
So I was picking him up from school one day. I think it was maybe 8 or 9, and he said they like tennis and like basketball.
Okay.
Both the boys. So I says to me one day, he says, I've chosen which sport I want to be in. I want to be in tennis.
Okay.
I said, oh no. I said, you have to go through this all over again, right? So I said, well, the good news is I'm your dad. The bad news is I'm your dad. This is not something of a business where you can say, okay, I brought it up to this stage, now I'll hand it over to my son or daughter, and they are going to be able to then build it up into whatever. It doesn't work that way. This is something based entirely on merit. So that's it. There's nothing you can hand over. The greatest joy I ever had when he wanted to play Davis Cup for India. So he played Davis Cup for India for nearly 10 years, and then he was on the tour for 11 years. And then 3 surgeries took him out of the sport, and now he's the face of the tennis channel in the US.
Right.
So he's still very much around the sport, and he knows it backwards and forwards. But a sport can't be handed over. If your parent has been very good at it, then the last name can be an issue. Because the inevitable comparison is going to happen. Right? So I always said to him, I have 2 jobs here, and it's very easy for me to fire myself in one of them, but not the other. So if I'm going to coach you, I can fire myself as a coach, but I can't fire myself as a dad. So that's always going to come first. And I'll be the first one to take myself out of it. But he wanted me to coach him.
Okay.
So I did.
Okay.
And all it did was it brought us closer together.
Okay. Yeah. That special bond it must have created.
I think always a sport is something I always think is able to bring a family more and more close together. Boy, girl, doesn't matter.
Yes.
Mom, dad, doesn't matter.
That's right.
I think it's very important to have sport very much a part of your family.
That's right. Because even parents, even if they're not playing, as you said, they're contributing so much in making it happen, accompanying the children
Just
for
being
their
there.
matches, tournaments,
Yes.
it's a great bonding. Also being inducted in the Hall of Fame, one of the highest honors that a sports person can get. Again, what did that moment mean for you personally? I mean, was it kind of a reflection of everything that you gave to the game and the game gave back to you?
Recognitions are wonderful, but I think the more important thing is for your own realization as to where it started and what the journey was. And it just reminds you of that journey. And I've always said, if you didn't know where you came from, you will not know where you're going. And it's easy to lose your way in today's world, irrespective of where you're born today. And in those days, it was much more in the West. Today, it's across the world. And I think it's very easy for children to lose their way as they get older and older. The important thing for me was the fact that induction into the Hall of Fame, for me, in the contributor category, which was more than just being a player, the only Asian in it at this point, was the fact that they were honoring every Indian, both in and out of my country. And I felt that very strongly, which is what I said in my acceptance speech, that it was the growth of what Indians outside of India have done for the growth of India as well, that you're honoring, because that's where I started out. I went and had dinners in people's homes when they were living in a 1-bedroom apartment, sitting on the carpet floor with a little baby on my lap and eating dal and roti with them. They were looking to get better, I was looking to get better. I just happened to do something a little bit more in the public light than anyone else. That was all it was. But for me, their support for me is what took me to where I went. And I always said in Davis Cup, especially when I played in India, if I played 60% well enough, the other 40% they'll do for me. And they did. And I think those are the things that resonated with me when I was inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Also, you were appointed the UN Messenger for Peace, again alongside global icons like Muhammad Ali. How did you feel about the fact that you could actually use your voice, your influence at a platform like that? And was there any particular cause that was close to your heart in that role of yours?
Well, Kofi Annan, the then Secretary General, the late Kofi Annan, he was a diplomat's diplomat. I had not met anyone like him at all. He knew what it was to be able to use diplomacy at the highest level, to be able to bring people together, especially in areas of conflict. So when he appointed all of us, myself, Muhammad Ali, Luciano Pavarotti, the tenor, Michael Douglas, the actor, and Elie Wiesel, the Nobel laureate and Holocaust survivor, we each had certain things that we wanted to stay focused on. And Michael Douglas, for example, was small arms and so on. At that time, the AIDS issue was a major concern in our part of the world, especially in Asia, and India was getting there. So there were a lot of things that they had me do within the first 12 months, including getting on the ground 72 hours after the Bhuj earthquake in Gujarat. And I was on the ground in Bhuj 72 hours after the earthquake happened. And I was looking at the situation there and how bad it was, and how these little men and women from UNICEF who had just bottles of water and a cell phone, and they were rebuilding the lives of the families who had been affected by this death and devastation of natural tragedy. And, this was in Paris, London, or New York, where I was playing all these great matches. This was a completely different viewpoint of what life was all about. And I think you tend to open your eyes and see a lot more. Even you have your eyes open in all these places that you've gone and visited and played in, but you don't quite see everything else till I did this. And then, going to Bosnia, going to northern Sri Lanka, going to Thailand after the tsunami, all these things had resonated with me in a big way.
It's so interesting you talk about diplomacy. Back in 1987, I think you were the one who convinced the then Prime Minister to allow India to compete against Israel in Davis Cup. And in a way, that decision not just had a sporting weight, but a diplomatic weight. Again, your close ties with, say, George Bush brought you to that right intersection between sports and diplomacy. So do you think there is anything like tennis diplomacy? Do you think tennis and sports in general have the power to foster international relations?
For me, 1000%. Absolutely. Not just tennis, it can be done in any sport. The tricky bit is to use it in a very careful manner. But let's not forget, sport is only a part of a culture in a particular country. Politics comes first. They have to be guided by what the government feels, what the government does, how you can get along with the people you're having a discrepancy with, and so on and so forth. But my point is, that's where it begins, and you can use all the tools in your toolbox to be able to actually make it work. And I think people do want to see someone run faster than the next person, someone better than the next person in boxing or in tennis or in ping pong or whatever else it might be. It has no sense of religion, no sense of culture, no sense of society, no sense of society. Nothing matters except how good you are. And that's what people like to see about sport. Sport is pure. Music is pure. I think those things could be used for the betterment of humanity rather than only talking boycott.
Right. Can be used to unite, can be used to transcend boundaries.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. So most athletes wait till retirement to start giving back to sport. But you started your efforts much early on. The Britannia-Amritraj Tennis Academy, the Vijay Amritraj Foundation, your initiatives with the UN. So what drove you to start giving back to sport so early on in your career?
It's hard to pinpoint it, but the Tennis Academy, the Tennis Foundation, rather the Britannia-Amritraj Tennis Program that I started was simply because towards the tail end of my career, when I was playing badly, we always used to discuss, who's going to do this after me.
Okay.
And when I was playing well, we didn't think of it. We thought, it's going to be around for another 5 years, 8 years, and so on and so forth. So this friend of mine and I were running, he was running Britannia at the time, said, let's talk about this seriously so we can create this program. And so we did it when I was playing with the hope that we would be able to fuel a Davis Cup team. It was an excellence program focused entirely on 8 kids.
Okay.
And if the kid wasn't good enough, he was replaced.
Okay.
So school was free, books were free, rackets were free, travel was free, foreign coaches were free. Everything was taken care of by the sponsor. All they had to do was perform.
Okay.
And work hard.
Focus.
And we didn't lose their education also. So my mom tasted every meal that they ate. My mom did homework with them. My mom took care of their religion because each of them were from different walks of life, from different parts of the country. And if it wasn't for mom, that program would never have succeeded. So the guys who made it, Leander Pace came from the foundation, from the program as well, amongst others. Rohit Rajpal, who won the Asian Junior Championships. And those who didn't get there got scholarships in American universities. So everyone became good at something, most importantly, being good as a human being. And we always instilled in them that just remember that you're representing your family, you're representing your school, and you're representing your country, wherever you go. So that was instilled in them from a young age. That was what that program was meant to do. So as these things percolated into other things, the foundation started after I left the United Nations, after my term finished, after Kofi Annan's term finished, and started the foundation to help support some charities in India. And I always wondered, whether all families were fortunate to have the kind of parents I had when I was growing up. And if they didn't, is there some little thing we could do to help? That was all it was. And this year is our 20th year.
Oh. And it's so nice you say that, what you're instilling in them is also how to become a better human being.
Correct.
Which is so important in any walk of life.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You retired from professional tennis around 1993 after about 2 decades on the court and now almost 2 decades off the court. So transitioning away from competition is always difficult for athletes, But you seem to be doing a lot now. So what all are you busy with now? Because I remember your domestic circuit days and, friends tell me that your calendar was very busy at that time. I say your calendar is very busy even today.
Thankfully. I think the worst job anyone can have is an ex-athlete. Because frankly, what are you qualified to do? Okay? But the fact is that I was always interested and challenged by things around me. And that was from a very young age, for whatever it was, whether it was trying to build little somethings, and I used to make a film camera out of a cardboard box and put a magnifying glass on one end and a flashlight on the other end, and then pretend it was a movie camera, so we were actually creating a film, and so on and so forth. So it just comes from all of these various things that your mind goes all over the place before you actually challenge yourself to something you want to do. And it was the same with hospitality, with planes, with restaurants, with everything that I met with people. And I was always energized by someone talking about the finest cuisine that he was able to create, or this finest fashion that she was able to do, and so on and so forth. So I always had that interest of doing other things as well. But at the moment, my focus was on a particular sport where I had to be the best I could be.
Okay.
So once my sport finished, I started to explore a lot more of that and became partners in a variety of other walks of life. As it turns out today, at my elderly age, I end up, I'm a brand ambassador for several companies that are global brands that I work closely with. It's just magic that they have me on board. I end up having my own wine, and it's in 13 countries, and I enjoy talking about it and spreading the word around as far as drinking within reason with the wines. And more than anything else, I do about 15, 18, 20 public appearances on public speaking. I continue to do television. I still cover Wimbledon. This year when I go to Wimbledon, it'll be my 55th consecutive Wimbledon.
Wow.
When I go there. And that's a special moment to me, to be able to share that with friends and family and so on. So besides all of it, we have a film company with my son in LA, and he runs most of it, and we enjoy doing that. Plus, bringing events to India that we need desperately for global events. So it keeps me on my toes.
And while you said, what is a retired athlete qualified to do? I think a retired athlete is qualified to do anything because sports has taught him or her lessons which are useful across life, I think. Yeah. Several prominent athletes have established their training institutes, Michael Phelps' swimming training and Rafa Nadal's academy and so on. And a lot of Indian athletes are seeking international coaching. Do you see this as a long-term trend in the way Indian athletes will start getting trained? And how important is international exposure if you have to build world-class talent?
I think the first thing is knowledge.
Okay.
Who has the knowledge? Do we have enough coaches and teachers and mentors and everyone else in this country to be able to teach you and mentor you in the right way for your sport? Each sport requires different talents, right? So probably the best way to go with that at this point is to have any of those academies open here. So that we are able to have a touchy-feely with a lot more people rather than 2 boys and girls going there and at a vast cost and so on.
Few,
if you can bring a program to India like we did with the BAT program way back when, a very, very aggressive and forward-looking program from ours for today, I think that might be your best bet.
Yes, as you're saying, there's so much talent in India across sports, across geographies, across genders. But if given that, if you were to make a 10-year roadmap for Indian tennis, what are going to be your 3 topmost priorities? And what is that one mistake which you think the sports management should avoid?
The first thing I think is a commitment from the athlete.
Okay.
But the commitment from the athlete that someone gives, I'm not quite sure they know what it is. Because nobody's been there.
Yeah.
So what are you learning from? The only good thing today is a lot of our players are going overseas, so they know what everyone else is doing, so you could come back and understand what it takes. Forget going to movies, forget going out on evening events, forget doing anything you like to do. Sacrifice. Are you willing to sacrifice your entire teenage years all the way to see if there is a 1% chance to making a difference? I don't know. That's number one. Number two is, do families have both the financial ability to risk everything and take a second mortgage on their house to be able to actually put it into their child's tennis when they don't know where he or she is going to go? People have moved from different parts of Europe to be able to go to Florida to be able to do this, giving up everything, leaving one spouse at home. Are we willing to take those risks? For some, it's better to go to school because you can,
see a chalked out path.
Absolutely. So those things have to be overcome first. My suggestion has always been that sponsors are available at the moment because India is in that growth spurt. So we have enough companies. My thought process is take the top 100, 200 companies in the country. We already have the CSR, the program that's in place. Let them give X amount of money towards sport, targeting 80% of that money going towards a sport of the CEO's choice.
So that there's passion behind it.
And then 20% goes into a blind pool. So everyone does that, leaving cricket aside because obviously they're wealthy enough to be able to do their own thing, but across the board. And then you put someone who's a commissioner of sport to be able to pull this together to pick 10 or 12 disciplines that we think we can win medals in.
Okay.
We can't be good at everything. If you had put me in ballroom dancing, it would have been a complete waste.
We don't know. You didn't try it. You tried a Bond movie. You could have tried that as well.
So I'm just being straightforward in saying, pick the sports we think we can perform in, and there are enough. Okay, and then every 5 years you make sure that the guy changes if he's not delivering, right? The biggest thing that we need to do is to protect the ones who don't make it. How do we protect them? Which means each of these companies are giving 2 jobs a year that they set aside for the kids from this program who don't make it.
Okay.
So that there is a safety net underneath, so the parents are happy to take this risk.
Right.
That's my suggestion. And as we try so hard now for the Olympics for 2036, which is what India is going after at this point, can we run it? Absolutely. Will we do a spectacular job? Absolutely. Will we make a profit from it? I think so, because India has got the ability to do all that. The hospitality in this country is overwhelmingly so far ahead of anywhere else in the world that you could possibly look at, that we can do wonders with the Olympics being here. But, I always said that we shouldn't run it if you're going to be ranked 159th in the medal standings. And that's my concern. We want to be good enough to make sure we're in the top 5.
Are you excited about the coming Olympics? I mean, you played a role in getting tennis into Olympics
Yes.
many journey. What was that journey?
In 1984 was the non-medal sport. Tennis was the non-medal sport in Los Angeles in 84 when Stefan Edberg won it. And I worked closely with ITF and Philippe Chatrier, the president of ITF at the time, to bring tennis into the Olympics. And eventually it became a medal sport in 1988 in Seoul. I was honored to carry the Olympic torch at that day, and which was very special.
Right. And you're right there in
Yes.
LA where the
Amazing.
Olympics. Yes. Vijay, your journey has spanned across tennis, diplomacy, Hollywood, commentary, and much beyond. But is there any unscripted moment in your life that shaped your path? Something that may not have made the headline so far, but something that put you on the path and changed your life?
The world's toughest job ever is being a parent. A lot of things we get paid to do, and a lot of things we don't, because we do it because we love it. And environment changes every decade, I venture to say, but probably even sooner now. And it's tough to be a parent today, boy, girl, irrespective of it. Age groups change and so on and so forth. And social media is arguably the most antisocial thing you've ever seen.
Yes.
And so when you look at that, and we're fortunate to have the family we have, I would say that would be the single greatest blessing of all, by a long shot. And the fact that the boys and I speak every day, wherever we are, which is unique. I think also the fact is that my journey has taught me a lot in every single thing that I've been able to be a part of, good, bad, or indifferent. And when you see someone else also having a tough time, that you're able to lift him or her up. And I think the experiences that I've gained because tennis took me to these places I never thought I would go, or meet people that I never thought I would meet, whether it was Pope John Paul, or whether it was Nelson Mandela, or whether it was presidents and prime ministers and kings and queens and so on. So I think from an experience perspective, it has given me knowledge that I never could have learned anywhere else, And so when you say unscripted, my whole life has been unscripted, and it's not something that you target to do in these various formats. But I like those challenges. I like the fact that I'm trying to be the best I can. As old Kennedy said one time, even if you're being a ditch digger, be the best one you can. So I think those kinds of things resonate with you when you come from the field of sport.
Right. So Vijay, we come to the last section of my show. Just give us impromptu answers to these questions. Dinner with Roger Federer or a drive with Jimmy Connors?
You could have picked two better people to be able to ask that question. But since you kept it so vanilla, I'll try to stay with the vanilla answer.
Yes.
Short drive with Connors and a short dinner with Federer.
Both have to be short. Yes.
Short. Dinner with Federer, I know he likes Indian food, so that could be a long one.
Okay.
Drive with Connors, if it's like his 200 backhand, I'll have to think twice about that.
You've commentated on some of the most legendary tennis matches in history. And what is the funniest or the most unexpected thing that happened while you were on air?
1996 Wimbledon final. Richard Krajicek was playing an African American by the name of Malavia Washington in the final. And prior to the match, as they were taking pictures on the center court, there was a spectacular streaker that ran across. Completely in the birthday suit. And first time on commentary, I was lost for words.
So what? There was just quiet.
It was quiet. They couldn't cut it. It was live on TV. That was it. How many cameras can you move away from the scene that's going on? Better than any match point we'd ever seen. It was awesome. I think the ratings went up.
The TRPs, as they call now. If there was a Hollywood movie made about your life, which actor would you pick to play you?
My son.
Okay.
He knows my head inside and outside.
Correct.
Both of them do. The first one would be able to do it right away.
And who would you pick for your doubles partner?
Oh, that's a good one. You gotta have. I'm sure you've seen my brother playing, right? You've
That's
seen
right.
Anand
Yes,
playing.
yes,
So
yes.
Anand, we call him the Indian Barry Manilow. He's got the flowing hair.
Yes,
and,
the grey hair.
Yeah, and his colors are all quite psychedelic.
That's
and
right,
what he
yes.
wears, and as I
Absolutely.
always say, when I grow up, I want to be like him. So that's why we get along as well as we do. We have a great time together. But you got to get someone with, good personality to be able to do it. So casting will take a while.
If you had to pick one city to live forever, would it be LA or Chennai or any other?
There are lots of places in the world that you like to visit, and there are one or two places you could possibly put stuff down. But I think irrespective of where I lived, whether Stockholm or Sydney or Tokyo or Tashkent or Bombay or Boston, honestly, it wouldn't matter because I will always be Indian. So that will never be able to go out of my head or in my heart. And so for me, I could easily live in Chennai tomorrow morning. I could live in Los Angeles tomorrow morning. I could live in London tomorrow morning. But where would you feel the most comfortable is possibly pretty much any city in India.
And wherever you live, you'll always be an Indian at heart.
It cannot be excluded from who I am, from the core to where I am today, and what it has given me being Indian, and to have so much of that affection from people that I've seen around the world be able to help me out of tough situations.
In your career, what's the one thing you feel you haven't done yet, which is in your bucket list?
Yeah. I think if I had to replay my life, I wouldn't change a thing. I think I would have probably wanted to, not probably, for sure, wanted to be a better student, so I didn't give my mom that much trouble growing up. But, often you think whether you do things and you deserve it. And because I was given so much more than I ever deserved. For me, that's my greatest gift. It's been given to me for some reason. I don't know why, because I certainly didn't quite deserve everything that I've received. And I always continue to try to give back.
You're being so modest about it. I think it's in a way shows that we need to value whatever we get.
Yes.
You know, it's irrespective of whether we think we deserve or not, but do we value everything that we get? And I can see that in your eyes. If you could go back in time and give advice to the 7-year-old Vijay, what would that be?
Wake up, read it again and again, you still don't get it. I don't understand. There used to be one poem in my English class that was coming up the next day in our exams. And so Mom was reading it to me morning, noon and night. You know, it was called Godfrey Gordon, Gustavus Go was the damn poem. And read it. I read it so many times the night before, everyone in my house knew it except me. It's not possible to be like that. How can you do that? It's 7, 8, 9 years old. I mean, so I wish I could have been better.
What's the one skill that tennis taught you and which later became a guiding principle in your life?
To always find the good in people. Everyone has good in them, and we all have bad in us. I always say the good in me was given to me by my parents, and the bad in me I found along the way. So I always felt that. I feel strongly about it, and I feel very strongly about the fact that every person has good in them, and we just have to find it. And sometimes they themselves don't know what it is, but we can find it. And when you communicate, when you talk, when you have that relationship with anyone, friends, family, it's not easy in today's world often enough when you see it across the board, but we got to find that good in people.
Vijay, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Really, thank you for being on my show. You know, your life seems like a masterclass on resilience, on grit, on grace. Whether facing the toughest of opponents or whether breaking new grounds beyond tennis court, I think what you've taught us or what you've shown is how to lead with both strength and with heart. So here's wishing you many, many more successful sets in this incredible match called life.
Thank you. Chanda, thank you so much. Love being on your show.
Thank you so much.
All the best to you.